Today we're going to be looking at Isbel Ahage. So this was a good request. Isbel is a very interesting card, and you'll notice she's missing some restrictions other cards have. We'll get to that in a second. First of all, she is a 8 provision, 5 power human mage. Has not changed in a long time. And yeah, 8 provision, 5 power is it's a stat line where you expect the ability to be really good. And she has an order, which means she's in that 5 damage removal range, which means you really need help to keep her alive most of the time. But let's get on to the actual ability before we talk about keeping her alive and see why you might want to do that. So order ranged, already row locked, 5 power, very vulnerable. If your opponent's hand is not full, go top card from both decks, keep one and give the other to your opponent. So it has a lot of similarities to a couple other cards. And those cards are, perhaps not very surprising to anybody, are our good old Mata. So Mata also gives each player a card. Hers is a deploy, also ranged. So if neither player has passed and your opponent's hand is not full. So you'll notice here that if neither player has passed and opponent's hand is not full, hand is not full is there so that you can't draw a card, the opponent doesn't get one. But if we look at Isbel, you'll notice that she only has if the opponent's hand is not full condition. So if the opponent has passed, you can still use the ability of Isbel, which opens up some very interesting situations. Particularly, well, there's actually a couple interesting ones, but before we get into like how you'd use her, there's another card we want to compare her to. So first of all, she essentially draws both players a card. Before we get too far into this, I want to mention that a couple years ago, for a very long time, Isbel was bugged. This bug has been fixed, but the bug was when you clicked the order for Isbel, she would only draw one card and you would get to keep it, which is obviously completely broken. It was a very inconsistent bug, but whenever it showed up, people got so mad. It happened on and off for like at least a year, but that bug's been fixed. I just want to bring that up in case you didn't know it. At one point, she was completely broken because her ability was bugged, and sometimes you just got an extra card, which won games completely. Anyway, now though, she works how she's supposed to. Both players do get a card every time you use her. The thing is, would you exploit that? Is if the opponent has passed, they can't play the card you give them. When does this really matter? Round 3, if the opponent's played all their cards and used Isbel's order, you give them a card, they can never use it because they've already ended all their plays for the game, and you get to play an extra card over them. That is one very powerful use. The other use has to do with her looking at the cards from the opponent's deck. So you can play the opponent's card, right? You see both cards, you see the opponent's card, your card. If the opponent's card is better, you can take it and then use it. In a lot of ways, this is similar to Cantarella. She plays the top card of the opponent's deck. Isbel lets you see the opponent's top card and then keep it if you choose to. Difference, obviously, is that Isbel's not a deploy effect, so you have to wait, use the order. She's super vulnerable when you're doing that. She can die. But she does have a very potent ability. It is a very strong ability if you get it off. You can take the opponent's good cards. You can stack your deck. You can see the opponent's deck with Spotter. Stuff like that. If you want to be really, really fancy, you can stack your deck with something like Fisher King. So say like this is just hypothetical. I don't know if there's a deck that would really want to do this. It might be funny, but say you just like stack your deck with Fisher King. Now you can force the opponent to get the card you place on top of your deck with Fisher King if Isbel's ability goes off. So you might give them, I don't know, just any card that's awful. You could give them like some bad card, or you would give them a card you'd want to copy with something like Duchess Informant. It's a much, much more roundabout, less good way of doing that than Vilgefortz Renegade, but it is an option. But yeah, you could give your opponent a card that really benefits you with the Fisher King and then the Isbel order. Very fringe case, I just thought I'd bring it up because it can be very amusing to do. You give your opponent something that potentially hurts them, or something like that. So there are uses for Isbel. Issue is that stat line, right? 8 provisions, 5 power, and range locked. She's very easy to remove, but she does have a nice effect, right? Getting to keep an opponent's card is good. Having hand knowledge is good. Even if you just like keep your card and see what the opponent's card was, it's good to know that. But unless you're getting some kind of advantage off of this, that 8 provisions is really holding her back from giving you good value. So you really want to be taking an opponent's card 90% of the time with her to make her good, right? If you're just playing her to draw a card, and the opponent's also getting the card, we're excluding the end of round 3 scenario here. But suppose, I guess end of round 1 is another potential time you could use her, right? Say the opponent passes on when you're at like 4 or at 5. You play Isbel when you're on 5, and they pass, so you go to 4, knowing that you can't play round, like you'd have to go down 2 cards, and you'd have 9 cards round 3. You can Isbel to draw each player a card, and they get an extra mulligan, but you can recover having that 10th card in round 3. So that is an option. It's not nearly as good as the round 3 getting an extra card, but it's possible. So there's uses like that for Isbel. If you're not getting an advantage like that, you'd want to be taking the opponent's card to pay for these provisions you're using on her. And you'd want the opponent's card to be like a better provision card than your own. So how would you set that up? There's a couple ways to do that. Go look at opponent's deck here. I'm not sure how well this keyword will search. You can see the top of the opponent's deck. You can see it with Courier. It looks at the top 3. You can move 1. The move is really nice on the Courier to set this up. The Spotter obviously lets you see the top 3 cards as well. Courier is a little better in that it moves the card. Tray Hand, you can see the top 3 and then banish 1. Or you could always play Warrior the All-Seeing, which no one has played in like a year. Although at some point this plus Contrella was a fun little combo. But yeah, you put the highest card on top of the opponent's deck. This is probably the best setup. Put the highest version card on top, and then you play Isbel. You draw their highest version card, and then give them whatever garbage was on top of your deck. However, if you're not doing something like that, that's where the Isbel provisions, like she's way too expensive if you're not getting a good effect like that. You're not getting some advantage from her effect. However, there's ways to use her, and I wouldn't say she's bad. Like her problem is that the setup to make this effect good isn't worth it compared to other cards in the game. We should probably compare her to the one other way that you can get... Well, there's a couple other ways to get card advantages, which is what her round 3 is doing, which is probably her best use. The most obvious is mill. You mill out the opponent, they don't get to draw the cards. But also, you can do the Stregobor plus Mata combo. So Stregobor, each player draws a unit from Stregobor and sets it to 1. It's got timer 2 ranged. What you do is you play your Stregobor, then the next turn, you play your Mata. Mata draws you to 10 cards again. Or your opponent to 10 cards, the Mata gives them their 10th card. And then Stregobor tries to draw them a unit, and they can't draw one, so you gain a card advantage. So there's a couple other ways, and I think they're pretty similar in the amount of... well, there's a lot of setup required for both, right? And both of them require a unit to be on the board. One requires Stregobor, one requires Isbel. So there's potential, but the drawbacks are kind of too big to use her. How would we make use of her then in the future, and should she be changed? I kind of like the Isbel effect staying how it is. She is really good. Like, this effect's really good if you can exploit it somehow. So the potential issue there is the setup needs to be easier for her to work. Maybe you can make her 6 power so she's not as hard to kill. A lot of strong order cards are being made 6 power. I wouldn't mind that happening with Isbel. Now that the bug's fixed, everyone gets 2 cards. Even if they get like say take your big card, you had a turn to kill Isbel. It's not like Contarella, right? The opponent plays Contarella, then they rip your scenario out of your deck, or they like rip your Saskia Commander or something. You're like, wow, you're really good. They play Isbel, you're like, oh, I can kill that. If I can't kill it, fine, kind of deserve them to take my top card. So there's a little difference there, in my opinion at least. Having time to answer something like this makes it much more fair and less frustrating. But for Isbel, the effect still is pretty decent. She can also be played in a mill deck, because she does draw you and your opponent a card, so you can technically use her to mill as well. No one really does that, because the mill deck doesn't want to have to protect her. But what would really help Isbel, and what I'd like to see, is just more synergy with the Nilfgaard mages, right? If we look at Nilfgaard, we look at the mages, we have a lot of deck manipulation from them, right? We've got Vikavar Novice, draws a card and places a card from your hand on top of your deck. You can put a bad card on top of your deck to set up the Isbel. That's nice. You've got Mage Assassin. It manipulate. It does stuff when it's in top of your deck. You've got the Blightmaker move something to the top of your deck. And if it's a mage, it spawns the Guardian. So that has deck synergies. Faircart plays the top card of your deck, or draws you top card of your deck rather. Fringilla is just really bad, sadly. Another request. We're doing Isbel instead though, because Isbel is more interesting. Albric, when moved to top of your deck, he does something. So there's a lot of top of deck synergies here with the mages. I would just like to see, potentially, I think the best way for Isbel is just, if the Nilfgaard mages get some in-archetype like synergies that are better and become playable, I think Isbel might be able to fit in there, because she fits well with their... There's sort of an identity in the mages here. Like even like Vilgefortz does something with the top of the deck. There seems to be some kind of synergy with doing stuff in your deck or hand with the Nilfgaard mages. And if there was more setup for that, maybe some way that one of them would put the token on top of your deck so you can give the opponent it with Isbel. Maybe you do more setup on the opponent's deck, because you can set up your own deck with the mages. So she is a very interesting card, and having it on an order seems a lot more fair than something like Cantarella. And even if she does, like, say that she takes an opponent's 10 provision card and you give them a 4, you've gained like 6 provisions there. But she's only a 5 for 8 anyway, so that's not too ridiculous. Like a 5 is probably worth like 3 provisions, even if there's no 3 provision card. It's still not crazy, but I don't know. What do you guys think about the Isbel? Were you playing when she had the bugged effect? Because that was a fun time. Whenever someone played her, I was like, alright, here we go again, just trying to RNG a win with the bug. But yeah, I think she potentially could go to 6 power if you really want to buff her, but really I would like to see the Nilfgaard mages as a whole get changed to have some more support with Isbel, because a lot of them do stuff with the top of the deck, and it really seems like they wanted this to be some kind of archetype where you manipulate your deck, but it's just not there. Like, you can do the Albric stuff, right? Like Albric Hyperthin, but that's about it. So hopefully they do something to change that. And I'm curious to see what they'll do, because I really would like to see Nilfgaard mages have some options here, other than just be like a little package with Mage Torture and Arthood and Assimilate, and then Vilgefortz and a bunch of Renfrey decks. So hopefully they do something there, and hopefully it allows you to play Isbel. As it is right now, she's pretty weak. I should have mentioned this earlier, but you can actually give her Zeal pretty easily with the Petrie's Filter. This is one thing I should have mentioned earlier. Sorry about that. It should have been in the beginning. But this has the order to give a unit Zeal. You play Isbel, you play this, you can use her ability right away. So that's potential. Again, it's 5 provisions for just 3 points. But having that Zeal ability could be really good. This is especially true because it opens you up to the, you have this out, and then you last say your Isbel, and then you just use her order and draw her card. Draw cards. The problem with drawing a card last in round 3 is you don't get good synergy with that card, right? Having a card advantage is really good, but if you have, say, a total of 10 cards in a round, you draw an 11th card, and you draw that card on your last turn, you have to play it on your last turn, right? Which means you can't trigger good synergies. So, for example, just say Pellar is a useful card because you can remove a Purify at some point during the round and lock one of your key cards. If you draw Pellar as the last card of your round, it's just 4 points, and the Purify doesn't matter. So, even though having an extra card is a really big advantage, part of that's allowing you to play the card at a time of your choosing, whereas Isbel last saying just lets you play it as the last card, which is worth something, but it's not as much as if you just had the extra card in your hand all along. But yeah, should have mentioned that one in the beginning. But yeah, overall, that's Isbel. She's interesting. There's a lot to say about her, and she does have uses. I just think that right now she's a little too counterable, and her effect's not strong enough to really warrant it, because you have to have setup with cards you normally wouldn't play. If normally in your Nilfgaard deck you were running Warith the All-Seeing, just because you wanted to run him, it's like, say he was in every Nilfgaard deck, then maybe, like, just say this was in every Nilfgaard deck, you're like, oh, maybe I could use Isbel combo with it, but he's not in every Nilfgaard deck because you don't have, the setup isn't something you'd naturally run because it's not very good. So hopefully they make the setup better, and that helps Isbel. It's been a longer one because there's quite a bit to say about her, but I hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know what other cards you want to see next time, and if I missed anything with Isbel. Until then, hope you guys have a good day. That'll be it for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time. Make sure that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. And you can check out some more videos over here. And thanks for watching.